"Please, hurry," she gasped, clutching her ankle as the sprawling garden twisted under the late afternoon sun. Tiana dropped her backpack, textbooks slipping from her grip as she sprinted toward her, heart pounding. She had missed her exam, again, but seeing the woman collapse like that, she didn't care. The air was thick with the scent of expensive roses, sunlight glinting off the chrome of the waiting limousine. "You shouldn't be here," the woman's voice trembled, fear and relief tangled together. Then a deafening whistle split the air. Tiana froze. A sleek helicopter descended, its blades scattering petals and dust across the manicured lawn. The woman stared at Tiana, eyes wide. "I didn't expect anyone else." And in that moment, Tiana understood. Helping her would not end as a simple favor. The city swallowed the last light of day, shadows stretching across glass towers and rain-slicked streets. The puddles reflected fractured neon signs as Tiana dodged traffic, her textbooks bouncing against her chest while a distant siren added urgency to the evening air. Clouds hung low, casting the billionaire's estate in a dim, wavering gray. The manicured lawn glistened with rain, petals trembling on the wrought iron fence. The cracked tiles along the garden path hinted at careless wealth, while a moss-streaked fountain stood silent and accusing. Warm light spilled from the tall French windows inside, creating golden rectangles on the terrace. A ticking clock echoed faintly, each second pressing against Tiana's conscience. She had skipped her exam, defied protocols, and risked everything to help a stranger. A single white rose in a crystal vase drooped on a nearby table, foreshadowing the fragility beneath all the grandeur. The helicopter's rotors left the air vibrating, scattering leaves and petals like warnings. Shadows stretched across the hedges, flickering unnaturally, reflecting the turbulence in Tiana's own chest. This world, polished yet fractured, mirrored her inner turmoil. Every flicker of light, every whisper of wind suggested stepping deeper into this place would cost far more than she expected. Tiana crouched beside her, brushing wet hair from her face, trying not to let the weight of the city's gaze, or her own guilt, crush her. Her black hoodie clung to her frame, sleeves rolled up just past her elbows, revealing a faded tattoo curling along her forearm, a symbol of resilience she'd inked after her father passed. Her fingers, trembling slightly, clutched the woman's ankle, and her jaw clenched each time the pain made her wince. Every shallow breath she drew mirrored the tension in the stormy air around them. She gritted her teeth, gripping Tiana's shoulder with one hand, the other pressed to her ankle. Her wedding ring caught the last sliver of sunlight, glinting like a silent accusation against the chaos of her gilded life. Her expensive blouse was damp from the rain, delicate silk sticking to her skin, but she held herself upright, her posture rigid with control, an invisible barrier between vulnerability and authority. A sharp hum cut through the tension. Tiana's gaze shot upward. The helicopter hovered, its shadow sweeping across the garden, painting dark lines on their faces. The billionaire descended first, crisp in a tailored navy suit, cufflinks gleaming, posture rigid and commanding. Every step he took was deliberate, measured, his piercing eyes scanning the scene as though cataloging every potential threat. He didn't speak at first, he let the silence carry weight, but his fingers drummed lightly on the polished side of the helicopter, an impatient, contained rhythm. "Who's responsible here?" His voice was smooth, controlled, but Tiana felt the undercurrent of authority press down like a physical force. I was helping her," Tiana said, standing, trying to appear steady though her stomach churned. Her palms were slick with rain, the ink on her forearms slightly smudged, a subtle reminder of her humanity. The woman coughed, trying to interject, her lips pressed into a thin line. "It's my fault," she said, but Tiana noticed the slight twitch of her jaw, the way her hands flexed nervously, gestures betraying that beneath the wealth and poise, panic still ran raw. The billionaire's eyes softened fractionally, scanning her face, then flicked to Tiana. A silent calculation passed between them, tension crackling like static in the rainy air. Tiana realized instantly. This man's wealth might have bought anything, but it hadn't taught him mercy. And yet, standing there, soaked and exhausted, she felt something shift, a quiet defiance, a spark that she alone carried into this strange, high-stakes world. She straightened, shoulders squared, meeting the billionaire's gaze without flinching. A storm might rage outside, but inside, a different kind of reckoning was just beginning. The helicopter's rotors slowed, leaving a vibrating hum that clung to the damp air. Tiana's fingers still gripped her ankle, and she could feel the tension radiating from every line in the billionaire's stance. The man stepped forward, polished shoes crunching against the wet grass, cufflinks catching the waning sunlight like tiny warning signals. "Explain yourself," the billionaire demanded, voice even but sharp, slicing through the drizzle. His eyes, cold and precise, tracked Tiana's every move. Tiana swallowed, wet hair clinging to her forehead. I saw her fall. She needed help. I couldn't just." Her words stumbled as she gestured toward the woman, whose breathing was shallow, eyes darting between them. "Couldn't just what?" The billionaire pressed, stepping closer, shadow stretching over Tiana like a physical weight. "Skip an exam? Trespass on my property? Endanger yourself?" Each question was measured, controlled, yet carried an unspoken accusation heavier than rainwater pooling at their feet. The woman winced, her ankle trembling under Tiana's hand. "It's okay," she said quickly, voice tight with tension. He helped me. That's all." Her gaze flicked nervously to her husband, then back to Tiana. Her lips twitched, betraying guilt and fear intertwined. The billionaire's gaze softened for a fraction of a second, but that was enough for Tiana to notice the flicker of something behind the authority. Curiosity, maybe even admiration. "And why should I believe you?" he asked, leaning slightly, hands behind his back, posture immaculate, a living sculpture of command. Tiana straightened, shoulders rigid despite the adrenaline. "Because it's true. I risked failing my exams. For her. And I'd do it again if someone needed me." She let her gaze meet the billionaire's, calm but piercing, the rain reflecting in her eyes like shattered glass. The billionaire's lips pressed into a thin line, a flicker of surprise passing across his face. The rotor's fading sound mirrored the sudden stillness that fell over the estate. The woman's breath hitched. Shadows from the helicopter's blades danced across the polished windows, sketching their tension onto the walls behind them. Then the unexpected happened. The woman shifted, her hand brushing a small device from her wrist, a silent signal, and the billionaire's eyes widened. From the mansion's side wing, another figure emerged. An assistant, rushing, phone in hand, expression urgent. Tiana's stomach twisted. She had no idea what was coming, only that the power balance had begun to tilt. The billionaire's voice cut through the charged silence. "So this isn't just an accident?" His eyes locked on Tiana, scanning, calculating, a subtle smirk playing at the corner of his mouth. Tiana's pulse raced. The rain-slicked lawn felt suddenly smaller, the shadows longer, and the distance between her and the billionaire charged with possibility and danger. In that moment, it was clear. Helping her was no longer just a moral choice. It was the opening move in a game that neither wealth nor courage could fully predict. The estate had fallen into a surreal stillness. The helicopter's blades were now completely silent, leaving only the sound of rain dripping from the eaves and the faint hum of the city far below. Tiana's hoodie clung to her back, soaked through, and her tattooed forearms flexed as she supported the woman, her trembling form a stark contrast to the billionaire's poised composure. The billionaire stepped closer, each stride deliberate, the polished soles of his shoes clicking against the wet stone path. "You risked everything for her." His voice was sharp, controlled, yet tinged with incredulity. "Your exams, your future." Tiana's jaw tightened. Yes, because when someone's in danger, what kind of person stands by and does nothing? That's not a future, it's cowardice. A shadow shifted across the lawn as the helicopter's light caught the glint of the billionaire's cufflinks. His eyes, steel gray and unwavering, studied Tiana in slow, meticulous increments. He was used to control, used to command. And yet, something in Tiana's calm defiance, her upright posture, the steadying of her own breath despite the pounding in her chest, made the billionaire pause. The woman, leaning on Tiana, whispered, "Please, don't hurt her." Her voice was fragile but determined, betraying fear and loyalty all at once. Tiana caught the subtle tremor in her fingers as she touched her shoulder, a fleeting reassurance that this moment wasn't just a clash of wealth and risk, but of moral principle. The billionaire's hand flexed at his side, fingernails pressing into the palms. "You don't understand what's at stake," he said, taking a measured breath. "Everything I've built, every decision I've made, depends on people following rules." Tiana's eyes flicked toward the mansion, catching reflections in the glass doors. A life curated to perfection, but fragile, brittle like the raindrops clinging to the marble terrace. "And yet," she said quietly, "sometimes the rules are the ones that trap the wrong people. Sometimes, doing nothing is the real crime." The billionaire froze. For a heartbeat, the air seemed to thicken. His lips pressed into a thin line as he processed the audacity of this stranger. Soaked, exhausted, standing firm in a world where wealth had always commanded obedience. The tension between them was palpable, like the calm before lightning strikes, and every second stretched in agonizing slow motion. Tiana's chest rising and falling, the woman's anxious glance, the faint flicker of light through the clouds. Then the billionaire moved, faster than expected, leaning in, eyes narrowing. "Do you have any idea who you're speaking to?" His tone was a low rumble now, a dangerous mix of authority and curiosity. "I do," Tiana replied evenly, her voice unwavering despite the tremor running through her body. "Which is why I speak truthfully. You can't control every act of courage, nor should you try." The words seemed to shift the air. The woman's hand clutched Tiana's arm tighter, grounding her. Across the terrace, the assistant from earlier emerged again, eyes wide, signaling something urgent. The billionaire glanced at him, then back at Tiana, and a subtle smirk flickered across his face. A mixture of respect, amusement, and the first crack in the armor of his control. Suddenly, the ground beneath them felt smaller, the space between them charged. Tiana realized that the power dynamic had already begun to tilt. She was no longer merely a student who had missed an exam. She had become a catalyst, a moral equal, holding the billionaire's gaze and refusing to yield. The woman spoke again, her voice steady now. "She saved me. And if you can't see the value in that, then maybe you've lost sight of what really matters." Her words hung in the air, punctuated by the dripping rain, and the billionaire's eyes narrowed, not with anger, but with something more dangerous, consideration. Tiana's pulse raced as she felt the first true shift. Wealth and authority were powerful, yes, but courage, conviction, and the willingness to act in the face of risk had carved their own space. The mansion, the helicopter, the rain, all of it faded into a backdrop for this collision of principle versus power. The billionaire straightened slowly, taking a step back. His shoulders relaxed slightly, though his eyes remained calculating. Tiana realized, as she exhaled sharply, that the game had changed. The first move was no longer dictated by wealth or status. The balance of power had shifted, and the air between them was electric with possibility and danger. For Tiana, the choice had been simple: act or do nothing. For the billionaire, it had never been so complicated. And in that silent, rain-slicked garden, both women, and the man caught between them, understood that nothing would ever be the same. Rain had slowed to a mist, soft droplets clinging to the edges of the helicopter and the manicured lawn. Tiana stood a step back, her chest heaving, watching the billionaire as the man's rigid composure began to falter. Shadows stretched across the terrace, cast by the low, dimming sunlight, as if the world itself was holding its breath. The woman stepped forward, lifting a small, broken crystal vase from the grass where it had shattered during the chaos. She held it carefully, trembling fingers tracing the cracks, the fragments catching the fading light like tiny warnings. "It doesn't matter," she said softly, voice laced with quiet authority. "Some things, some people, can't be measured by rules or money." The billionaire's eyes followed the fractured crystal, then flicked to Tiana. Something shifted in that gaze, a recognition, a silent acknowledgement that the courage and moral conviction before him could not be dismissed or bought. He exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders loosening ever so slightly. Tiana, feeling the subtle shift, straightened further, hands unclenched but still alert. Her hoodie was soaked, her tattooed forearms glistening with rain, and yet she radiated calm defiance. Every measured breath, every steady glance, seemed to mark the first cracks in a life built entirely on control. "I underestimated you," the billionaire admitted, voice low, almost inaudible over the gentle rain. "Not your actions, but the conviction behind them." He gestured toward the woman, then back at Tiana. "Perhaps I've been blind to what truly matters." A faint breeze tugged at Tiana's hoodie, the clouds overhead parting just enough for a ray of sunlight to illuminate the shattered vase in her hands. The broken crystal reflected light unevenly, scattering tiny glimmers across the wet grass. A quiet symbol that even fractured things could still hold beauty, meaning, and power. Tiana's eyes met the billionaire's once more. No words were needed. In that charged pause, both understood that the rules had changed. Power was no longer measured solely in wealth, authority, or fear. It was measured in courage, action, and the willingness to stand for what was right, no matter the cost. The rain eased into a soft drizzle, the tension in the garden lingering like a pulse. And in that fragile, electric silence, Tiana realized, she had not just helped her, she had shifted the balance of everything. The helicopter lifted slowly, its rotors slicing through the lingering mist, scattering droplets across the polished terrace. Tiana watched, chest still tight from the intensity of the confrontation, as the billionaire finally turned away. His suit was damp, sleeves clinging, yet his movements were measured, deliberate, each step resonating with the weight of acknowledgement. The woman brushed stray hair from her face, fingers lingering on the soaked fabric of her blouse. I don't know how to thank you," she whispered, voice trembling but steady. She glanced at Tiana, eyes shining with relief and admiration. She offered a small, wry smile, letting her gratitude settle without expectation. The billionaire's gaze lingered on Tiana one last time. "You've made it clear that courage isn't bought," he said, voice low, almost a murmur above the distant hum of the city. "And I will not forget it." There was no anger left, only the faintest trace of respect, mingled with the weight of reflection. Tiana nodded, sensing the subtle shift had solidified. Her textbooks, forgotten in the rain, lay at her feet, edges curling, pages damp. She bent, gathering them with deliberate care, brushing off water and debris, each motion grounding her in reality after the storm of moral reckoning. A siren wailed faintly in the distance, a reminder that life outside this garden carried on, indifferent yet constant. Tiana inhaled deeply, letting the damp air fill her lungs, feeling both exhaustion and quiet triumph. The risk, the fear, the missed exam, all now seemed like small fragments of a larger story. A story she had shaped by standing firm. The woman stepped closer, touching her forearm lightly. "You didn't just help me," she said. "You reminded me, and him, what matters." Her gesture was simple, unassuming, yet it carried a profound acknowledgement of truth. Tiana felt the warmth of her recognition seep through the chill of the evening, grounding her in the human connection that had driven every choice she had made. The billionaire turned toward the mansion, pausing at the threshold. His reflection in the glass showed a man reconsidering what power truly meant, not just the ability to command, but the responsibility to recognize integrity where it existed, even outside the walls of wealth. He walked inside silently, leaving only the faint echo of polished shoes and the whisper of reconsidered priorities. Tiana watched him go, then glanced at the woman. For a moment, the tension lifted entirely, leaving the garden in a fragile, dripping calm. The helicopter had gone, the rain softened to mist, and yet the sense of upheaval lingered. A quiet victory, measured not in triumph over another, but in the moral courage to act when it mattered most. She gathered her bag, shoulders squared, and for the first time that evening, allowed herself a small, unguarded smile. In the fractured reflection of the wet terrace tiles, she saw not just herself, but the weight she had carried and the truth she had proven. Some things, courage, conscience, and human decency, cannot be bought, cannot be ignored, and cannot be measured in money or authority. And as she walked away, the distant city lights shimmered against the rain, each flicker a reminder that the world was vast. But sometimes, even in a single act, one person could tilt it just enough to matter. Tiana walked along the rain-slicked streets, the textbooks under her arms still damp, but her steps lighter than they had been hours ago. The city hummed around her, indifferent to wealth, status, or the battles waged in private gardens. Yet she carried with her the quiet knowledge that courage mattered more than conformity, that a single act of integrity could ripple further than any test score or title. She thought of the billionaire, returning to his mansion with new eyes, and of the woman, who now understood that even privilege could be challenged by conviction. The storm had passed, leaving mist and reflection in its wake, a subtle reminder that life would always test character in unexpected ways. Some lessons cannot be taught in classrooms, some truths cannot be bought, and some victories are measured not in applause but in conscience. Tiana looked up at the breaking clouds, rain glinting like scattered diamonds across the city skyline, and whispered to herself, "Courage doesn't ask permission. It only demands action." And in that simple, unassuming thought, she knew the world had shifted, just enough to matter.